You got a big fucking mouth, kid.
No!
Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
I can hear what you're thinking. All your doubts and fears. If you look in my eye in time, you'll find
we're talking
the reason I'm here.
Just so you're aware.
In time, all things shall pass away.
Ready to go ahead and
In time, you may come back someday.
Yes, I am.
Alright, hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is Rasco of Rasco's Modern Life. Hello, Rasco.
Hi.
Rasco, what do the people that are listening need to know?
Oh my god, I'll tell you right off the bat, they need to know that they can find old episodes of Geeky Gentlemen in the Geeky Gentlemen playlist, and they can download episodes from somewhere. I think the link is in the description. And if there's an episode that isn't there, but they would like to be there, they can leave it in the comments or something like that.
Man, do I say it too quick? What's the problem? I feel like you should get this by now.
I'm not gonna lie, I've made no effort. That's the honest to God truth here.
Yes, well, you can download episodes of Geeky Gentlemen. There's a link in the description. Download this episode. You can listen on the go that way. You can download old episodes by request. Just check out the Geeky Gentlemen playlist. Leave a comment on an old episode, and it will be uploaded to the downloading website at your listening pleasure. Anyway, Rascal, what are we talking about today, though?
Talking about The Punisher No Mercy live-action fan film.
Mm-hmm. You know, the way you say that, you use your, Grindhouse voice, and I could go for a Grindhouse Punisher movie. Anyway, so this is really interesting because I think it's a really well done fan film for being such a basic fan film. This is pretty much the most by the numbers thing I think you could imagine when you picture a fan film. It's it's more or less just a scene. It doesn't really tell a complete story.
Yeah.
It has a character cameo that doesn't really need to be there, but at the same time you're really satisfied seeing it. It has a lot of the tropes of fan films, but not in a bad way. So I was quite happy watching this.
Yeah, I thought that this was one of the fan films. So we had that fan film, Static Shock fan film was a good example of where it's both a complete story and it's actually made with some very competent directing sensibilities.
Mm-hmm.
This one is just more heavy on it's really well directed and it's very light on the story.
Yeah. This feels like a Punisher one-shot comic.
Yeah. It's very much like you said, and like we pointed out, there are certain types of fan films where they're kind of just like a scene, and as long as it's technically sound, that's fine for the most part. Yeah, I don't know. It makes there less to talk about story-wise, but I think that there's a lot of things to give it praise. So,
yeah, I just want to say about the story. I mean, just because it's a really by-the-numbers Punisher story does not make it, like, bad. It's just the Punisher breaks into a place and kills a bunch of criminals and fights Elektra. That's the story. And I mean, it's a fine story for Punisher. Again, it feels like a Punisher one-shot comic to me. That being said, the thing that is really, really good about this is the fight choreography. The way it's directed is good, but the fight choreography really makes this take off for me.
yeah, I will actually complain about one thing in the fight with Elektra, and that's just so the choreography is there, but I feel like it could have been specifically that, because I think that the shootout scene earlier, I think is pretty much perfect.
Mm-hmm.
The fight with Elektra, the choreography's there, but I think that the way it's shot, it just makes it a little bit too, like, they have to pull punches, and that's my only complaint with the fight choreography. It's light years ahead of a lot of what we've seen in the fan films that we've already reviewed. So
yeah, I'm trying to think, like, it seems that maybe Batman City of Scars is the only thing with fight choreography on this level that we've watched.
Probably.
Would you agree with that?
I think so.
And I mean, that's probably only more impressive just because the Batman costume, no matter what you do with it, is always very cumbersome. So I would say that has better, but this is still really, really well done. For me, what I really like about the fight choreography is how everything that Frank Castle does is very reflective of his character. Frank Castle is a man who is born to kill. He is someone who is incredibly proficient at doing terrible things. And I like you get two specific moments in the fight scenes that are just very well choreographed to fit that character model. One of them's when when he's fighting all the thugs, and like the one guy rushes him, and they actually get in a little bit of melee combat real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy gets Frank in like a lock, gets him where he's about to get him in chokehold, and at that exact moment, Frank pulls out a knife and slits the dude's throat. And then there's another moment, again, it's a knife pull, but there's another moment where Elektra puts him on the ground and steps on his neck. And for like half a second, he tries to get her leg off of him, realizes it won't work, and grabs for a knife, and then she has to let go of that hold so that she can defend herself.
It's really cool, too, because she like catches his knife hand with her heel again and like pins it down.
Yeah. And that's just really, really well done, because in a fight, this is why I'm bad at fighting. In a fight, you have to just not think, you just have to act. But if you have the ability to think about what you're doing calmly and rationally, you can actually be much more dangerous in a fight. It just depends on the speed at which you can make your body do the things you need it to.
Also, I agree. It's also very cool how Frank Castle's not the kind of guy where it's like like in The Winter Soldier, when, Cap kind of like takes off his helmet and does the one-on-one fight,
Mm-hmm.
The Punisher would never do that. It's very much like Indiana Jones pulling out the pistol and shooting the guy with the sword. Like, that's how the Punisher fights.
Definitely, and there's like a couple great moments like that in this. Like, I love when he walks across the room to the main crime boss, and then there's the one guy who's not a threat in the slightest, just crawling on the ground, wounded, and Frank just casually hovers the gun over his head and pulls the trigger. That is such a Frank Castle moment. But getting back to the thing with the knife, that is so perfectly someone thinking rationally. It's like when you're getting choked or whatever, like 9 times out of 10 when you see someone being choked in like a film or whatever, they go for the person's hands because that's actually very instinctual. You're being choked, remove the thing that is choking you. But it's not very effective. It's hard to do that. Whereas you rarely see someone being choked like immediately go to gouge the person's eyes out. And so it's that kind of rational thinking in the heat of battle that really is reflective of Frank Castle, and I was quite impressed by.
I totally agree. I really love the part where he comes out, he takes the first shot, and then it's like I forget exactly what he says, but he's like, the first one's like a freebie, like it's just like you get them, and then they fumble around for a little bit because they're scared. I really love that. That was really cool. And again, it's very much, that's very reflective of Frank and the way that he handles pretty much any combat situation. It's like, I've worked this out. It's a strategy. I mean, it's like he understands like the psyche of combat. It's like, what do people think when they're fighting? And he just like uses that to kind of think a step ahead. 'Cause he's like, this is just naturally how people will react in a fight.
And, it's interesting to talk about Frank being so cold and calculated and everything, because there's this old, I don't know if it's, like, truly a belief, but it's kind of one of those urban legend things about the nature of combat. And it says that if you're in combat for more than 100 days, you will break and lose your mind. It's impossible for the body and the brain to maintain that level of adrenaline and terror and dread and just all the emotions that go with being in combat. And yet Frank is a man who has immersed himself in a war in which he is always in combat, always experiencing trauma because he never rests, right? And so you see, like, that part of the character isn't super emphasized in this. But if you think of it on that level, and you see the way in which he's acting, I think it works for me as someone who admires parts about the character from just a writing perspective. I think the way in which he is so calmly calculated and brutal and effective, efficient in the combat portrayed in here really, really works. This is something that it doesn't feel like he ever makes a move that he doesn't need to. Everything about it is so so streamlined. Like the grenade that he throws out just as a distraction. That's such an effective strategy, and it can only come via terrible experience. And I don't know, I find that really interesting about the character, and I think I don't think that that side of the character, the eternal combat side, is really shown in here. It's more just a given, but I think it works.
Yeah, I also think that what really works in this as well is, like, I think the actors are pretty good. Like, I think Elektra is really good. I think that the guy with the really, like, it's almost like a velvet bluish, it's like a turquoise, like, shirt.
Oh, the silk shirt.
Yeah. The scene where he's talking to the guy and he, like, lights his cigarette and everything, and he's like, the other guy's like, you're fucked up or something. I'm glad that's why. He's like, something like, I'm glad you're with me or something like that. Like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you're working for me.
Yeah. Really, I thought that the acting was pretty good. Like, it was actually, like, much better than fan film acting.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It looks like this was mainly industry people, which is impressive. I will say my one complaint as far as acting goes is not anything they could control. I thought the actor did a good job, but the guy playing Frank Castle, he's just really young, and this is mainly me more than it's anything about what they're doing or what anyone else does for that matter. I really like to think of Frank Castle as a really old guy, who's just never given up, and so is still just as effective.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Very interesting because it's a bald Punisher, which I didn't have a problem with. I don't know, like I saw some comments where people were like, "Yo, it looks like Hitman Agent 47." Like I saw some people say that, and I was like,
whatever.
Yeah, no, I don't know, it's kind of cool. I actually like this just the look of the Punisher in this. I think that's actually pretty cool.
I don't mind it. Again, I just, I always talk about this whenever we bring up the Punisher, but Alex has put this idea in my head, and it'll never go away. I really want Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro to do a Punisher movie together. Like, I know that sounds ridiculous, but De Niro did method acting before method acting was really a thing, with, like, Raging Bull and stuff. I think if you could get him, like, a really good script, get Scorsese attached to direct, I think you could have a really good Punisher movie. In the same vein as, like, Taxi Driver. And it'll never happen, but I can wish. So that's, whenever I think Punisher, I think old-ass man who should not be doing this anymore, but is just that far gone.
Ain't got time to bleed.
Yeah. And I don't know, part of that, too, is the idea of the Punisher being a Vietnam veteran, but with the way that wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have gone and how veterans have been treated since they've come home, those two aren't that far off anymore. So thank you, American foreign policy. We have another possible origin for the Punisher that is perfectly consistent.
Good. It so everything balances out.
Yeah, right? It's a terrible joke, but there you go. I don't know, it's just, I think that whole characterization really works for him. Yeah.
I agree.
That's what I got there.
Again, Punisher, a thing that really makes sense to do on a low budget, because the griminess of things when they're just, it works. Like, I think, it's almost just like 28 Days Later.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that movie is so low budget and grimy, and I think that, like, that movie kind of is just like, if people haven't seen that movie, once you watch that movie, it just kind of like wakes you up to how good movies can be when they look so like grimy and low budget, and it's such like an actually, it's like it gives like a thing character, I think.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like grainy film stock.
Yeah.
It has so, like, it's not appropriate. It's not something you would think you would ever want. Like, if you never saw a movie that really affected you that had, like, kind of crummy film stock, and someone told you, oh man, this film's so good because the film quality is really bad. You're like, no, that's impossible. But it doesn't work until it works. It's the same thing with, like, Les Paul and a bunch of the other guys making guitars back in the day worked really hard to make really clean sounding electric guitars. And immediately when all the good early rock and roll musicians did was find ways to distort the sound and make them sound kind of shitty. And it works. There's no way to explain it other than it just works. It sounds good with that distortion.
Yeah,
I agree.
That happens in a lot of things. Like, it's always great when there's like a amazingly technically sound singer, but oftentimes I really like just like horribly like scratchy, like almost like cat in a like almost like cat screechy type singers. I love that.
You should listen to some That Handsome Devil. I'm sure you'd enjoy it. He's got a very, very interesting voice. Kind of like Mr. Teeth. But anyway. Yeah, so like that, you're right though. The low budgetness of this really does work as a part of it. Even with Elektra showing up, Yeah. I was pretty happy for this to just end right before Elektra shows up. And then she does, and I was like, oh, we'll see if this gets to be a problem. And it's not really, but do you feel that she's necessary for it?
She's absolutely not necessary, but I like the actress.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess the way to put it then is it was a questionable decision that could have easily gone wrong, but ended up working.
Yeah, it could have been just like a why. It could have, yeah, like it's one of the things where it's like
It could have been like Daredevil season 2.
I think it could have been like having Ant-Man and Spider-Man in Captain America: Civil War. Right? It's like I want them there. Hell yeah, include them, please. Hopefully it doesn't fuck anything else up, but like I'm happy to have them there.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I tend to agree with that. I don't know. I don't feel like that whole fight scene, as cool as it was, and as much as I liked some of the choreography, really added anything to what Frank was talking about throughout this. But at the same time, it just was cool to see, and since there's not much of a story here to begin with, I'm okay with that. It's a cool addition for a cool addition's sake, is the best I could think to call it.
Yeah, I think you're pretty much spot on there. It's not really required, but it's like okay,
Yeah.
we're building a universe, I guess.
We're building a universe for a channel that hasn't uploaded anything in like 2 years. No, 3 years. It's disappointing because I watched through all the other stuff this channel has posted, and there's unfortunately nothing else that's not related directly to this. There's a trailer, there's some behind the scenes footage that's unfortunately not all that interesting. It's just like montages with music playing of what they were doing behind the scenes. There's no like discussing any of it. So I was a little disappointed by that. I don't know. I would like to see more from these people, and I'm sure if I looked, for the names of the actors and everything, I could probably find other stuff, but I don't imagine they're going to go back to fan films.
Probably not.
Yeah, boo hiss. What can you do? I don't know, Rasco, you take us somewhere else then, because we need to fill more time.
Let me think. So we talked about acting, we talked about the technical aspects. I'll say this. Oftentimes, like, so doing, like, narration can be hard when somebody is, like, really bad at doing narration. Like, I think, as funny as it is, like, it's like one of the most iconic things from the CW shows, just the, hi, my name is Oliver Queen. Yeah, I was trapped on an island. Like, just every episode it starts with that.
Oh, dude, you should read Jeff Johns' Green Lantern. Every issue opens with, my name is Hal Jordan, Green Lantern of Sector 2814, blah, 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 happened in the last issue. Here's what's going on now. And then it jumps into the story, and it's like every fucking issue.
It's funny. I thought the narration was pretty good in this though. Like, because I talked about it, like the one part where he's like, you take the first shot and it's like a freebie, and then like that whole scene. Like, I think that he does a good job with the narration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Like, I really love the moment when Elektra shows up. He's like, there's an old military saying that no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. And yet, everything that Frank did seemed according to plan and worked out just fine. And then the fucking Scythe comes in, and Psy comes in, and he's like, but some enemies you can never plan for. It's like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
It felt like a Punisher one-shot comic. You know what I feel like I could do? I feel like I could take this fan film, get screen grabs from it, and turn it into a comic book. I really think I could do it. I could take screen grabs, maybe apply like an artsy filter on it to make it look like an ink drawing or something, and I could easily turn it into a comic book. Like, I could take the narration and make it comic book narration bubbles, and I could take the dialogue, make it comic book bubbles, and I think it would feel very much like a Punisher comic.
Yeah, I'm like skipping through it right now.
Mm-hmm.
The audio off. You could totally do that.
Oh, man. Again, it's like 18 minutes. Comic book is 22 to 24 pages, so you could pull at least, a couple images for every minute. You'd be fine. You would totally be able to do this in panel form. That's funny.
Yeah. The Punisher, the coat, Punisher in a coat is always cool.
Oh yeah, definitely. I fucking hate the vest thing. I hate the vest. I hate the vest even more when it has like the tubes of whatever the fuck they're supposed to be for the teeth. I cannot stand that shit.
It's. I agree. I think I like this kind of Punisher get up the best.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I don't necessarily hate all the other types of Punisher, garb we could go with, but I really like Punisher in a coat. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. It was funny the other day I was out, and how you see people with like their bumper stickers and window stickers and stuff. I saw a guy, and he had he was driving a Jeep, and he had the word Jeep, but the E's were replaced with Punisher skulls. And then he had a Jack Skellington skull up in the corner of his windshield. And I was just like, either this guy is a fan of Nightmare Before Christmas and the Punisher, or he just really likes skulls. Random thought. I don't know when else I'd get a chance to tell that story, and we need to fill time. But yeah, back to the narration. Sorry, I got us so off track. I did like the narration in this. I agree. I thought, again, it felt very much like a one-shot comic.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I would have enjoyed this as a comic book, too.
I think one thing I'll point out as well, because I don't think we ever talk about this, we kind of brought it up in the last thing where there was like a weird lighting thing going on where there was like light coming in from outside during the nighttime.
Yeah.
But this fan film, it like actually has like really good and like creative and like almost like stylistic lighting.
Sure. I don't know a ton to talk about with lighting, so I'll let you just go.
So it's one of those things where I honestly don't know what exactly they're doing, but there are moments where, like when Punisher and Elektra are fighting, there's a part where they're in like the dark, and they like go into that like other room, and I think there's like a light up in the corner of the room, and it's one of those things where it's like it doesn't really necessarily make sense, but when you can get away with doing like ridiculous lighting that makes no practical sense, like where that source of light is coming from, but it works. Like the best example is Tarantino. Ever since Kill Bill, he has had the most ridiculous. I don't know who the cinematographer is for Tarantino. I do. I don't know his name, but you can always tell when it's one of his movies. Because he does this thing where he just literally puts like spotlights above people's heads, and then it just like light literally just like pours down directly on top of people. And like in The Hateful Eight, you look around the scenery, and there's just like literal spotlights on things. And it doesn't make any sense practically, but it works within the scene. And this fan film has that, where it's like there's this part where they're like in this room fighting, and there's like a light in the corner of like the top of corner of the room, and it just makes the whole scene look really cool.
Yeah, neat. Oh man, yeah, I agree. I think the way in which this is shot, which we haven't talked about a ton beyond the fight choreography, but the way in which this is shot, I at no point don't know what's going on, which is a danger in a lot of fight choreography scenes. I at no point don't know what's going on. I'm able to follow everything, and it looks dynamic. It looks clean. It's cut really well too. I was highly impressed by this. I thought this was damn good. Like the only thing I think I've complained about is like a completely personal, subjective thing. It has nothing to do with the film itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, good on me. I don't know. I'm pretty damn happy with this. So I'm also out of things to say, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say either.
Yeah. All right. Why don't you give us our rating first?
Okay. I will give this. I'm gonna give this 4.5 baggies of cocaine out of 5.
Oh, it's funny. We're going to go for very similar things. I'm also going to give this 4.5 out of 5 women in their underwear cutting bags of cocaine. Oh, there's a complaint. If this wanted to be accurate to actual crime, then the women would be naked. Okay? It's funny, like it's kind of like halfway, because the reality is this is on YouTube and you can't just show TNA like that. But in reality, they would be naked. But since you can't show that on YouTube, they're in bras and like skirts or whatever. But no respectable cocaine manufacturer would allow them to be wearing that because they could still steal stuff. That's the whole point of them being naked in the first place, is they can't steal anything. It's a whole thing, man. Don't ask me how I know this. I don't even fucking know how I know this. I just do.
Because you're a terrorist, dude.
Right? Okay. So, that all being said, next time on Geeky Gentlemen, we're going to do another formula break of something we've not done before. It's still a fan-produced product. From what I can tell, this has no official sanction. But we're going to be talking about a stage play called Twisted, The Untold Story of a Royal Vizier. Okay. It's an Aladdin fan film.
Oh my god, what the hell?
It's an Aladdin stage play fan production, I guess you'd call it, more aptly. And it's, just generally speaking, it's the story of Aladdin as told from Jafar's perspective.
Oh boy.
Yeah, should be good. Everyone, thanks very much for watching. We're gonna go from, fucking hardcore gritty street crime to fucking Aladdin next.
Compatible.
Certainly. I envy those watching every episode of Geeky Gentlemen through the playlist. Because, that happens, right? Oh, man. Anyway, everyone, thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I'm the Beta Male Cock.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.